Welcome back to Who's to Know. Tonight we're going to be dipping into our Thanksgiving leftovers that we had frozen by making a pot pie from leftover turkey that we picked off the carcass. So we're just going to follow the recipe for a traditional chicken pot pie, except instead of chicken, we're going to be using turkey that we already have. Usually when I make this pot pie, I get the mixed vegetables that are frozen. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing the recipe calls for is to preheat the oven to 425. We've already got that going. And then now it says we're gonna heat over medium heat, 1/3 of a cup of butter, and we're gonna cook and stir the onion until soft and translucent, about 5 to 10 minutes. I'm not sure if this is exactly 1/3 of a chopped onion, or will come out to be 1/3 of chopped onions, but this is a leftover onion that I had, so that's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna do a smaller dice on this rather than a larger one, just because we are gonna want these to get cooked down pretty good. So we're just gonna do just like this. Because I already have my stick of butter here in the butter dish, I always go back and usually consult how many we actually need. This recipe calls for 1/3 a cup of butter, which is 5 tablespoons. So comparing these together, we want about 5 tablespoons. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a mark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I'm gonna cut these up into smaller pieces, about a tablespoon size pieces, just so that they melt quicker in the pan. My butter's all melted, so now we're gonna add in the onions. You'll want to stir the onions to make sure they don't get too done. You can see over here the butter is browning just a little bit more than we'd like. So you make sure if that starts to happen, then turn your heat down and just make sure you keep your onions stirred. The recipe says cook for 5 to 10 minutes until the onions are translucent and soft. This recipe also calls for 1 3/4 cup of chicken broth, but I don't usually keep chicken broth in the house. So what I'm going to do is use this bouillon cube, put it in here, and put the water I need and let it go on the back burner. So while that chicken broth is getting ready, I've still got my onions over here and my butter, and now what I'm going to do is, now that the onions are soft and translucent, I'm going to sprinkle 1/3 cup flour, salt, black pepper, and celery seed into this until it's all coated. Okay, so I'm adding in my 1/3 cup flour. Mix this around until the onions are coated. So we got a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. I'm not gonna measure that. And 1/4 of a teaspoon of celery seed. I don't know if this is gonna fit in there. Nope, sure it isn't. Hey, there we go. Mix this in until the onions are coated with the flour. And we're actually gonna have to take that off heat while we wait for this. So we will just actually turn this off while we're waiting for this broth back here. I should have had the broth going before I even started this, but I forgot about it. So I'm just gonna do it now. I'm just kind of stirring this and agitating the water a little bit so this cube breaks up. You could also kind of smash it with the wooden spoon as well. You want to make sure it gets completely dissolved though. Alright, so that is ready. So now I've got my broth that I'm going to use. So now that we've got our broth ready, we're going to put this back on the heat, and it says to put it on medium-low. So this will have to heat back up a little bit. Slowly pour the broth and milk over the onion mixture, stirring constantly. Bring to a simmer over medium-low heat. 1/3 cup, 2/3 cup. So I'm gonna do the milk first. It doesn't say broth and milk, huh? It doesn't say which one to do, so I'm just gonna go for it. Maybe I should have done the broth. I don't know. I don't know how slowly is either, but we're just gonna keep going just like this. All right, so there's our milk. Add in the broth. Pot pie is very forgiving, so it's very forgiving in terms of what vegetables you use. It depends on what vegetables you like. You know, you can use fresh ones or you can use the frozen bags like I use. Stirring constantly, it says, so we're gonna try to keep that going. Bring to a simmer over medium-low heat. Cook until thickened, about 10 minutes. Okay, so we got our timer set. So this is gonna simmer a little bit. What we normally do is press the first pie crust into the dish, but since we don't have that, what we're just gonna go ahead and do is take the diced up turkey that we already have and the veggies and put it in our pie crust, or we're gonna put that in our dish because we don't have that one pie crust. So we're just using one pie crust this time, and we're gonna use that one on top. This recipe calls for 1 pound of cubed cooked chicken. This is probably not 1 pound, but this is the turkey that we've got, so this is what we're gonna use. It calls for 1 cup corn, 1 cup green beans, half a cup of sliced carrots. So altogether, it's calling for 2.5 cups of vegetables. Take one of these frozen bags and I'll use this. So I'll pour out 2.5 cups of these vegetables. I cover this water, put it in the microwave for about 5 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 8-9 minutes. Our sauce has thickened up, and so now we're ready to take this off the heat. One thing I should have done at the very beginning was pull this pie crust out so that it had time to warm up a little bit. Here. Maybe if we roll it like this, it'll warm up. I don't know, probably not. So this mix of vegetables has corn, carrots, peas, and it even has green beans. That's not exactly what the recipe called for, but basically all the recipe called for was mixed vegetables, and that's what we get in here. Really, whatever your preference is. You could put okra in here. You could really put anything. And now we've got our turkey. Pour it just like that. Cover with the crust, seal the edges, and we're gonna cut some slits in here for ventilation. So it's just as simple as that. You just plop it on there, and then because we don't have a second crust, we're just gonna take this and put this around the edge, just like this, to seal it. Normal pie crust. This part right here, we can kind of take some of that extra off. Bake until the crust is golden brown and filling is bubbling. 30 to 35 minutes, cool for 10 minutes. So we're gonna put this in our oven, which is at 425. If you look right here, you can see that the filling is actually bubbling a little bit, or it's heated all the way through because the turkey was already cooked. Everything was already cooked. We were just letting it kind of meld together. So we're gonna let this sit for 10 minutes. Our pot pie has cooled down for about 10 minutes now. So cut into it and see how it was. Do this corner right here. Because we didn't have as much turkey in here, it's not as thick as it usually is, but that's okay. It's still a pot pie. We still got our vegetables, our crust, our turkey, and the most important thing is we used all of these things from what we had in the freezer. There you have it. We've made a pot pie from leftover turkey from Thanksgiving, and we used up a bag of frozen mixed vegetables that were in the freezer. We also used a leftover pie crust that we had from, usually pie crust come in 2, but we had a leftover one, so we used that up. Other than that, all we needed was the flour and a little bit of spices and milk. And that's really all it takes to make a pot pie. And again, a pot pie is very forgiving. We didn't have as much meat as we usually have, but that's okay. We just make it up with the vegetables, or the pot pie is just a little bit thinner than normal, and that's fine. There's no crust on the bottom, that's fine. It doesn't matter. Really, you can make a pot pie any way you want to. My goal here was to use up some Thanksgiving leftovers and also clear some things out of the freezer by using this bag of mixed frozen vegetables and this frozen pie crust that I had. So there you have it, a turkey pot pie from Thanksgiving leftovers. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.